This is the story of Sean Penn, who has systematically deconstructed the boundaries between professional craft and civic obligations, navigating a volatile trajectory from cinematic iconoclast to global humanitarian leader. For over 4 decades, Sean Penn has operated on a high-stakes, all-or-nothing principle that blurs the line between a movie set and a disaster zone. How does a figure defined by tabloid notoriety transform into a knighted ambassador? And what drives a man to replace Hollywood glamour with a tent in a refugee camp for 9 months? Family histories often start with a single moment of trauma. Born on August 17, 1960, in the coastal city of Santa Monica, Sean Penn entered a household defined by his father's political courage. Leo Penn, a World War II veteran and director, was summoned to face the House Un-American Activities Committee during the Red Scare. He refused to name names regarding alleged communist activities, a decision that resulted in an immediate blacklist and ended his career as a film actor, which taught Sean early on that authority should be viewed with suspicion. Paramount refused to renew Leo's contract, and CBS eventually ousted him after an anonymous accusation claimed he had addressed a communist political meeting. Barred from acting in films or television, he turned to directing to survive. Malibu Park Junior High and Santa Monica High School provided a secular backdrop for Sean's childhood, where he befriended fellow students like Emilio Estevez and Rob Lowe. Watching his father rebuild a professional life in television directing, helming episodes of classic shows like Star Trek and The Fugitive, instilled a pride of service that would eventually drive Sean's own humanitarian efforts. One teenage anecdote highlights this connection. When Penn was a ranked junior tennis player and recognized the name of a coach as an old friend of his father. He called Leo from a payphone during a match between UC Irvine and Pepperdine, and that moment of reconnecting old friends stayed with him until Leo's death in 1998. By the time he moved to New York at 19 to start his own career, he arrived with a specific mental blueprint for resistance. This skepticism didn't just shape his early activism, but rather became the very fabric of how he inhabited his characters, and that's when the foundation for his professional intensity was laid. Breaking out in 1982, Penn transformed into the stoner icon Jeff Spicoli, a performance that helped popularize the word dude across the national vocabulary. That early fame hid an intense commitment to the craft that almost turned tragic during the filming of The Falcon and the Snowman in 1984. Portraying the real-life spy Andrew Dalton Lee led to a severe struggle with substance use that horrified director John Schlesinger and threatened the entire production. Penn eventually realized his addiction was destroying the work he loved, so he chose to seek sobriety and rebuild his professional reputation. This loyalty to the subjects he inhabited didn't end when the cameras stopped, which meant that in 1998, he hired the actual Andrew Dalton Lee as a personal assistant after Lee left prison on parole. Penn believed Lee deserved to be successfully reintegrated into society and wanted to reward him for allowing the film to be made in the first place. Acting is an all-or-nothing principle for Penn, who often compares his process to the building of a house. While other actors like Harrison Ford might view acting as a form of carpentry, Penn sees the director as the carpenter and the actor as the wood being hit by the nails. He considers himself an emotional canary in a coal mine, an artist who must go to whatever dark place is necessary inside himself to find the truth of a character. This immersive philosophy ensured that by the mid-80s, the public could no longer distinguish where the bad boy persona ended and the artist began. He never does anything halfway, but here's the thing, his private life was about to turn into a high-speed war zone. Marriage to pop star Madonna in 1985 made Penn the main target of the tabloid press and birthed a public image defined by aggressive conflict. Hostility toward the paparazzi resulted in several physical altercations, including a 34-day prison sentence in 1987 after he punched a film extra who tried to take his picture. For 30 years, a persistent rumor suggested that he had once struck Madonna with a baseball bat during their marriage, but that story was finally dismantled under oath in 2015. Filing a $10 million defamation suit against producer Lee Daniels forced the truth of their relationship into the legal record. Daniels had compared Penn to actors accused of domestic violence and Madonna responded by providing a sworn affidavit to the court. She stated clearly that Penn had never hit her, tied her up, or physically handled her, and she called the reports completely outrageous, malicious, and false. The legal battle ended with an apology from Daniels, who admitted his statements were reckless and thoughtless, and a significant donation was made to Penn's humanitarian fund. This moment marked a critical junction where he was no longer just the difficult actor reacting to his own fame. As he cleared the wreckage of his own past, he began looking toward the wreckage of the real world, starting a transition that would take him from the luxury of Malibu to a disaster zone. What nobody expected was that he would spend the next decade proving his worth in the mud. Hurricane Katrina served as the catalyst that changed Penn from a celebrity observer into a direct participant in global crises. Navigation of a small boat through the flooded Ninth Ward in 2005 saw him pulling survivors from the water, which meant his life as a political letter writer was over. The 2010 earthquake in Haiti pushed this commitment even further when violent tremors shattered the country in just 35 seconds. Within hours of the tremors that left 220,000 dead and 1.5 million homeless, Penn assembled a team of doctors to take action. What began as a 2-week aid mission turned into a 9-month stay in a tent on the ground. He personally managed the Pessionville camp, which housed 60,000 displaced residents, while overseeing the removal of 500,000 cubic meters of rubble from sites like the National Palace. This hands-on management style led to the creation of CORE, an organization that now operates across 5 continents and handles everything from earthquake relief to operating one of the world's largest vaccination sites at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. Formal recognition arrived in 2010 when the Haitian president knighted him for his service, and he was later named an ambassador at large for the nation in 2012. He had successfully traded the soundstage for the disaster zone, rewriting his legacy as a humanitarian who stayed in the mud long after the news cameras had left. But the problem was that intention is not a substitute for oversight, and that change came when the money started to flow too fast. Scaling a nonprofit from a tiny team into a global machine created institutional pressure that the organization was eventually unable to handle. Fueled by a $30 million infusion from billionaire Jack Dorsey during the pandemic, CORE grew rapidly to a revenue peak of $122 million in 2021. However, that number crashed to just $62 million only 1 year later, as funding for testing and vaccination efforts dried up. A Bloomberg investigation titled "A Money Mess" exposed serious internal failures, including aid shipments from Amazon that reportedly sat unclaimed for days and loose oversight of multimillion-dollar grants. One employee even reported having to beg the charity to stop paying him months after he had already resigned and left the company. Bloomberg quotes former Chief Technology Officer Samuel Hilsman, who resigned because leadership ignored his financial concerns and focused more on press images than actual work. Reports of personal misconduct and whistleblower pushback further damaged the institution's standing and caused corporate donors like activism to sever their ties. Fallout from these management issues led to the layoff of 28 staffers on New Year's Eve in 2023 to combat a $20 million deficit. While CORE has since stabilized and earned a 4-star rating from Charity Navigator in 2024, the period revealed the hard limits of celebrity-led activism. Intention is never a substitute for professional oversight in the world of global relief. The result was a move into a different kind of danger that would soon put him face-to-face with a fugitive. Guerrilla journalism became Penn's next frontline when he traveled into the Mexican jungle in October of 2015 for a secret meeting. Sharing a meal with the world's most wanted fugitive, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was an extreme move that put him in the middle of a global geopolitical drama. The resulting article in Rolling Stone included admissions from Guzman about his global supply of illegal substances and his fleet of submarines, planes, and boats. While Mexican authorities later claimed that tracking Penn helped them find and recapture the fugitive, the legal reality was that Penn had no duty to report the location. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara reportedly investigated the ties, but experts concluded that criminal prosecution for a citizen journalist was unlikely because he wasn't actively hiding the criminal. Penn defended the interview as an attempt to bypass the filtered news of the West and discuss the drug war directly. This fit a pattern of him seeking out figures like Hugo Chavez and Raul Castro to witness history firsthand without institutional gatekeepers. He views himself not as a traditional reporter, but as a vessel for raw experience, applying the same immersive acting toolkit to international diplomacy. Critics have frequently labeled these engagements as propaganda for dictators, yet for Penn, they are essential efforts to witness history without the filter of monoculturalism and division. The result was a shift in focus that would eventually take him from the jungles of Mexico to the bunkers of Kiev. February 24, 2022, found Sean Penn in Kiev on the very first day of the Russian invasion while he was filming a documentary about Volodymyr Zelensky. The project, titled Superpower, evolved from a character study of a former comedian into a frontline chronicle of a nation fighting for survival. Penn visited Ukraine 7 times over 18 months, which meant he was sitting for interviews in bunkers while missiles struck the capital city. He emerged as an outspoken lobbyist for military aid, famously telling reporters at the Berlin Film Festival that in this specific conflict, weapons are humanitarian. Handing his own Academy Award to Zelensky served as a symbol of faith that the country would eventually win, an act that earned him an Emmy nomination in 2024. Penn threatened to melt down his Oscars if the Academy didn't allow Zelensky to speak at the 2022 ceremony, calling their refusal a sign of continuing shame for the industry leadership. While critics argued his presence was a form of white savior syndrome, the film was praised for its heartfelt portrayal of national unity. Penn described the experience as his last stand, a moment where his craft and his duty to the world finally became the same thing. He entered the documentary with a blank slate of historical knowledge and chose to stand back and listen to the experts while documenting the atrocities he saw up close. But what nobody expected was that his return to acting would be his most chilling yet. Last night's victory at the BAFTAs solidified a major career resurgence that many didn't see coming. Collaborating with Paul Thomas Anderson on the 2025 thriller One Battle After Another gave Penn his most chilling role yet as Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw. Portraying a corrupt military officer allowed him to return to the brooding intensity of his early years, and the performance won him the BAFTA for Best Supporting Actor on February 22, 2026. This win has positioned him as the favorite for the 98th Academy Awards, which are scheduled to take place on March 15. The film itself had a massive production budget and underperformed at the box office, earning only $208 million worldwide against a $300 million break-even point. This resurgence happens alongside a personal life with his girlfriend Valeria Nikov, an actress from Moldova who is 34 years his junior. Despite his current success, Penn is currently planning a retreat from acting to focus on the director's chair. Shooting for his next film starring Tom Hardy is scheduled to begin in the summer of 2026, which signals a possible permanent move away from the screen. He is finally trying to control the hammer instead of being the wood it hits, attempting to escape the 15 years of misery he felt while working on film sets after his second Oscar win. To understand Sean Penn is to realize that the man and the actor use the same heavy toolkit on every surface of their lives. There is no hidden version of him, only the constant application of an all-or-nothing principle that builds both monsters and relief camps. He admits that he has a great love affair with humanity, but is often difficult to deal with on an individual basis, acknowledging how hard he makes it for the public to appreciate him. His recent award success for playing a villainous character is a fitting end to a career built on friction and intensity. As he transitions to directing Tom Hardy in 2026, he is finally trying to control the hammer instead of being the wood. Penn remains a relic of an era when grit mattered more than being liked, acting as an obligated optimist in a world that is usually on fire. His preoccupation with global crises during the Trump era once led to a period of depression and alcohol use that contributed to the end of a marriage, showing that his intensity has a personal cost. The most striking thing about his path isn't the trophies or the headlines, but the realization that for Sean Penn, the only real danger is the silence that comes when the work is finally finished. Can a man who has lived his life in the wreckage ever truly find peace behind the lens? Or is the struggle itself the only place where he feels functional?